Or, I mean, we kind of adjusted the plan. Remember when you were at that meeting? That's the last meeting I've been with, Lena, we were talking about.
Yeah.
And we adjusted the plan to let the traffic flow through for Scoglins.
And there we go. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, Jeremy, I think we're good now.
Awesome. So, just for the sake of recording, everything's good. And we seem to be on track. And we are looking forward to, if all things are meant to be, we're looking forward to an advertising in October. So I still feel good about the schedule. The document set is a very, very hardy construction document set, as you might imagine. It's very technical. There are lots of layers to this layer cake. As Michael pointed out, when we're making changes, those changes echo through all of the 250 pages, of our construction documents. So we'd really like to see, everybody get on board and move on down the road so we can get this thing advertised.
Thank you, Jeremy. Any questions?
I have a question. We're obviously at the point now where Jerry's gonna send out the construction documents next month, which is, I don't know what date, but next week is October, right? So at what point do we draw a line in the sand? Because when we send out construction documents and we only have 17 agreements signed, where is that line? I mean, there has to be a deadline of saying, here's the date, we're gonna, and Jeremy, are we sending out construction documents based on everybody's approval or based on the approvals we have?
We have been very nimble in this process. So as tweaks have been necessary, we've been making the tweaks, and I have not been screaming bloody murder about it because we're on the team and we want to see this thing done. It is an interruption to getting to the greater whole, but we're just making the changes, Mayor, as we go. So we're up to date with any small change that's been asked by a property owner currently, or one modification or another. We've made those changes, and those are reflected in the current construction document set. We will not send out without being ready. I mean, obviously, what I should say is that we're going to wrap up those construction documents, and at that moment, and for example, we have the water permit, so we're permitted to build the water line currently. We're ready to go. So the water plans, for all intents and purposes, as a component of this set series, is ready to go. There's very little that we have left to get in place before we could actually bid the project. Now, I said October, you're right. Next week is October. I don't think we ever imagined it would be the 1st of October, more likely the latter part of October. So we have a few more weeks here to get things kind of buttoned up, I think. But yeah, we're interested in completing our scope, and there's been no indication to me that we need to pause or stop producing. So we'll continue to wrap up the documents as we can.
Okay, just for my mind, let's say we send out the bid documents at the end of October, right? And we still don't have, and we're still missing some executed easements. We send out the bid documents, and how long are we giving them to reply to that?
30 days.
30 days?
We
can get
can't.
longer.
Sure.
But-
I mean, we can't actually, it would not be my advice to you to advertise for bid until you're comfortable with your easements. We are showing on our documents, sometimes while we're mostly in the right of way, we have some temporary construction easements to allow for construction, any small disturbance over the right of way line. We have the large part of our project, of course, is the utility corridor, and the utility corridor does get pretty close. And so we've asked for easements for maintenance purposes and that sort of thing. And so, it would not be my advice professionally that you advertise or go out for bid on the project without having the easements, in place.
Okay, so then for clarity, you're not sending out bid documents at the end of October.
We
That
are.
is- Go ahead.
We are completing our plans. I think I should be clear. We are continuing to complete our plans, but once we're done with the plans, then it becomes, oh, we're changing the plans. And so I think changing the plans cannot be an endless process. While we've attempted to be very flexible and incorporate, changes that we've experienced or that we're being asked to do, we're good to go right now. But in a few weeks, we really will be wrapped up. And then it would be opening up a completed set of documents and making changes.
Okay, so for understanding, you're not planning on sending out the bid documents at the end of October unless and maybe this board needs to decide, here's the ones we're missing and we're gonna move forward with everything except the ones that are missing. But so I'm not gonna leave this meeting thinking that you're sending out the documents at the end of October, come hell or high water.
We won't advertise for bid until we get a nod from the city.
So she'll be, I think for a little bit of clarity, she'll be done with her design documents and her contract with us.
Yeah.
And any changes from that point forward could lead into a change order.
So our next meeting,
So she's delivering hers, city's delivering the utility agreements and the best of our ability for the easements. And the people that will be noted as holding the project will be the business owners along 76
so that'll be a decision at our next
at our next meeting.
board meeting. Fair enough. Thank you very much.
I know there was a talk about the letter sent out. Was that letter was sent out to the?
We did not send out the letter from our lawyer, from Holly's group, because we were getting people online and it was like, do you send that
Yeah.
warning letter? And we're right here with some people. And like I said, many of the properties are taking care of small issues on their part and some are playing games. I'll be honest, some people are
Yeah.
one way or another. So, I have confidence we're gonna get some more. Now, are we gonna get all of them? I doubt we'll get every single last one. There'll be somebody, but will we get a lot more? Yep. I think I think Holly can maybe jump into, like, legally, I think without the easement, we can't advertise a construction project because it's not our property. For that, so he's correct, the mayor is correct. And board member is that you need to cut that part out somehow. But you won't have a duct bank, you won't have a water line if you cut one piece out. So the city is always under the direction of admin has always been, we're not gonna do condemnation, we're not gonna go through all that. It's a willingness of the businesses to invest in the community's future.
Okay, so that adds additional clarity. So at our next meeting, we're gonna know what we have and haven't signed. The ones that are not signed. At that point, are we going back to Jeremy to redesign around the properties that we do not have executed documents?
And I would say that is a decision that the board should direct.
We'll do that
The
next
city
week.
should make a decision on as a collective group offline.
And Jeremy, I know this is crystal ball because we don't know what we're gonna have and not have. Can you give just a rough estimated time of the redesigning to get back to construction bid documents? The time frame?
I mean, man, I would love to be able to tell you it could be 30 to 60 days. I think it depends on the complexity. As I mentioned before,
Sure.
we have really made every effort, in the project the whole way to stay as much as possible within the right of way. Every design decision that we made, allowed us to do that to the best of our ability. But it just is impossible to, with a project like this, to be so, so pure, I guess. But I would say we would have to have at least 30 to 60 days to be able to go through and incorporate changes. And then it just depends on how complicated the changes really are.
Sure. So
Of course.
realistically, at our next meeting, we're gonna have some documents that are not executed. And so a probability is gonna be, then we're gonna go to you with the ones that are not signed. Look at maybe 60 days out at putting out the bid documents, right? So that would be end of the year, right, December. Okay, so it would just push our,
It just keeps pushing
Start
out.
time, yeah.
Push
Okay.
another, so December, still put you out 30 days to review. December is from my perspective, and Jeremy, you can fill in, is a bad time to advertise for a construction project because people are busy with life and the holidays and Christmas and so on. So I would suggest that if you do choose, or as a city and a board choose to advertise, if it became a December let date, I would highly suggest
or
January
the
1st.
January, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's realistic.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would
Fair
agree,
enough.
I would agree with that, and I would say not the first part of January. We get
Right.
better results when we advertise mid-January, open in mid-February for an award or notice for March. Just
For
FYI,
a March on-site
start date,
starting moving dirt.
yes, sir.
Very nice, okay, thank you. That just adds a lot of clarity.
So
Michael,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Billy.
I know it's 17 out of 49 was 34%, but my question is, those remaining unsigned document. I know you've been working really hard, and I know a lot of them just waiting because like Olive Garden, through the process of corporate and all that stuff. I know that you can't give it a definite answer, but how do you feel about what percentage of that? Are you so close that you were just, like McGregor, he has so many property, right? And he's not really asking, it's just so many things that's gotta be incorporated. Is that like impossible? Are you leaning toward like probably the next 2 or 3 weeks, you're gonna get 60 to 70% of this assigned?
It's possible.
It's possible.
So,
Because I mean,
I walk away from meetings feeling like I would have something in the mail from some of them, or we did this with Jeremy's group, which they executed, we gave back. And we would have something else from them to digest and get the signatures. I mean, there are a lot of players in the game that own multiple
sure,
lots.
sure.
So if 2 of them, which we mentioned earlier, if I could have just both of them right there is 9,
Yeah,
right?
Tom and Blackhawk,
Yeah, sure.
Tom's at
Right, yeah, Tom's got 3 alone, and I truly believe it, I don't wanna go one by one today.
No,
But
no,
I believe in like, there's a future with a lot of them.
yeah,
so.
I'm just like, do you see more of a dark or? Is there a light?
I see the sunshine because I want this project to go. And,
Is there a light at the end of
and
the tunnel?
right, there is, and from my perspective and my job perspective of what the city's hired me to do is deliver a project with the parts that we're responsible for to the best extent that we can. And I can tell you, we as a group, along with Universal, along with Journey, have given nothing more than 110% to us.
And I agree with that, because I was in some meeting with Ann and everybody, I think the question is, you been living this 9 day, I think, I think there's a lot of progress from the last time we met in a board meeting. And I just feel like there's an energy or something that is momentum getting close in the next couple of weeks that we should be getting there. My question, is that like more like 50%, or do you think is more like,
I don't know.
yeah?
I would say yesterday, I wish they all signed, and I'd like
And
it to be known, since we're being recorded, that we have many notaries here, so we're more than happy to send notaries at lunchtime.
And I guess and I know that especially, I know that Gail made for some of their stockholder and Ann and you guys,
Yeah.
this last fast, I just feel like there was a lot of email that was going around that you have made a lot of progress. As a board, is there something else that we can do to help to move the button? Cause I know some of them, like, cause I asked you, but you know, there's one, you know, they didn't respond to their email. And I know this guy but I don't want to be like stepping on anybody's toe. But I just want to make sure that if there's anything that we can do, because I know from the last meeting, I just feel like there's a lot of positive momentum going on. There's a lot of things that was happening. And I know that if we, we don't want to be sitting in October next, in the board meeting, that we still have this discussion where we still have 17. And we're not, we could have done something if maybe the stakeholder, I mean, some of the guys like, Gail and some, or anybody that can help them process, because I know you guys need all the help, because I know as much as, you do a lot of work in terms of meeting with them, but also, knowing, close networking people that you actually know that can make it happen. And that's the only thing I can think of, but, I know there's people like the mayor knows, or whoever it is that we as a board member, Chuck or Brian, that we can, really, that's one more point. It's just, seems like, yes, we made progress, but, still 79 or 49 from last time. So the question is, did we really make progress from the last meeting that we had? And are we gonna be in that same discussion in October and November and December?
So, we went from what, 9 last time, so we
So
basically,
needed
we
another
basically,
stuff. Okay,
let's look at the glass half full.
so,
We doubled,
okay, good.
right? We've had many meetings on there. We have a signage package that should be done relatively shortly. I know we approved all that. That's out there. What can the board do? What can the general public do? Go talk to the businesses that don't have a sign and say, what can we do to help, especially from this board? What is, why, right? So everybody has different reasons. So, and yes, it is bright and it is sunny, because last time I brought you guys a list of a red page where I'm like, oh, man, that page is like very narrow now. We went back through and said, hey, like, no way possible how many people are still out there, right? Focus on them to bring them to the top. If everybody's rowing in the same direction, it's gonna be good, so.
That's good. Well, I think this was helpful.
Yeah.
To me to see who we need to reach out so I appreciate it. Again, this is not a point, but I'm just saying, what as a board member can we do? Or whoever it is that can help the process. I know you guys are working so hard to, not twist arm, but just trying to get improvement. But it takes a lot of, what'd you say?
Well, I'm just saying from a coordination perspective. like,
Oh, yeah.
We gotta sign it out, and I was just wondering, we play 76, I mean, if there's certain people.
Some of
that-
our board of all.
Oh, yeah, I never think about those guys. I mean, those guys got a lot of bull.
We do.
Commercial,
Yeah, so, yeah, good point. That's a very good point. I mean, I think as a team, we need to just help Michael and his team and everybody generally just to get this, so that in October of next week, of the next board meeting, we have this almost like, wow, we got somewhere done. We got, even when we say we were at 70% done, that would be like huge. I mean,
so can you send us the list of outstanding ones? Sure. And then,
this was helpful
Yeah.
in the same as.
Yeah, we will, we'll run that again. And how about I deliver that to you on Monday, because I have a bunch that we are sitting on
That's
that
okay.
we have meetings scheduled and I don't want to spook.
Oh, no problem.
Or scared.
Whenever it's.
I'll weed them, so there we go.
Whenever it's appropriate, but I think it's, I think someone could be strategized. Well, play group or play up with these people, whoever it is that we can do that.
Just a heads up. Prior to getting, or when we get the alderman involved, they're gonna need some pretty clear marching orders, because Ann and Gail know. Years ago when we did this, and the alderman jumped in, that caused the train to fall off the track.
That's shocking.
So
We'll have
Trying to
to
avoid that. what's a message from the alderman, what boundaries do they need to stay?
and maybe it's even them just attending, like being the connector.
Yeah, being the connector, right? Being the voice of hey, we need this easement to make things better. Getting somebody to sit down in person is the key. I really, really believe that. Like, I don't care how far well, I take that back. Anywhere in the city of Branson, I'm more than happy to meet anybody. So
I
we do
just
have a
let you
lot of
know,
people.
because, you really don't want. Because there's a lot of stuff when I met with Tom Beck, I know Tom real well, so, but without them, it's be crazy. So you don't want the alderman to meet
No,
individually, but you do need them there because there was a lot of, so no, we can't really do that because then we have to take care of this area, so and so, so that's, you can't, all those in, all the logistics, you need a person, but I think it's just, if say, okay, say it's Clay Cooper, he needs to be with them and usually this group is always available. It's just, when I was there, Cheryl was there, Mike and who else? Matt, were you there? Journey was there, so I mean, it's just like the whole team was there. And I didn't feel like we were trying to gang on and talk back, even though he felt, because I think there was like oh yeah, okay, we can try to do that. I think those kind of stuff. I'm surprised that he had not signed it, by the way.
We have a meeting with him in a little bit.
Okay, but anyway, so I know even him is, but I think we need as a team trying to figure out if there's any way that we can help these guys to get their side.
Would love for you guys to be the champion of getting an in-person meeting in City Hall with each person.
Yeah, I'd like to see,
That's the
I
champion.
think 17, I'd like to see somewhere like already something by next meeting.
is there a poll from like the chamber? I mean, can the chamber, I'm sure some of these individuals are either on the chamber board or from that.
And probably can give you the input from that, center most high.
The conveners, right, the connectors, the people at the table, it's not just the city reaching out.
Yeah, I think that's possible. I reached out to Jonas, a couple of months ago and asked for some help, and he reviewed that list. He was gonna help us with, cameras, I think, but then you ended up not needing that assist.
Yeah, I'm just saying like Pam,
Yeah.
right, like
But I mean,
Pam had the ability to say, hey, this is important conversation, please sit here.
Grant, right?
Grant
would be good
even.
at that.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll take that new list Monday, Alex, and run it past them, where they can plug in.
It's excellent.
it's interesting, is most of this are not too far away trying to get a sign, they are listening to them. So it's not like trying to twist somebody, it's just trying to find it, so, back Redhawks, that's my property, isn't it? We do know with Tom that there's a couple issues, just one or two issues, and everyone's trying to resolve that. So I think that's, it's not that far, but sometimes you need a cheerleader behind them to say, they don't have to do much of anything to, but it's interesting because I don't know the chamber, but I just know that, within the relationship, and you don't wanna threaten them, you just wanna work with them. I think this last month, they've done a lot of progress, I don't know that, I just need to move, help more, the next meeting,
The tide is behind us and we're
Yeah,
falling,
that's
and that's good.
yeah.
Anything else? Jeremy, good?
Are other board members on the CAP, like Brian and Chuck, I mean, you guys got great connections, are you having conversations with your fellow business owners and colleagues on the strip? Try to get this across the finish line too, or? I mean, I think that's one of the values, right, of the CID board is stakeholder driven.
When asked about those things, of course, I'm trying to get, some clarity on our own property up there at RFD and I don't have a lot of information. My boss may call and ask me, have I heard anything? And I tell him, no, I haven't. I mean, that ball's in your court. And my understanding was you're dealing with the city and trying to come to some conclusion. That does lead a question, for me though, in that, excuse me, I know there's no major improvements designed in front of that property. And would it be wise, and it may not matter, but would it be wise of us to identify those properties that we need this easement signed from that would cause very significant plan change design on Jeremy's behalf. And maybe those are already targeted, but identify those pieces, maybe Tom Beck's, and if it's Matt Grocock or wherever these major improvements are that may lie outside of the right of way, to really go hard at those to alleviate a huge time suck on Jeremy's part. Or is it you got to get all 49 to go to bid irregardless?
Holly, you want to answer that or help me through that a little bit? Journey's off, so. You know, like, I guess the perspective, Brian, to be honest with you, is I don't want to leave anyone behind because you know, here's how I'm looking at it right now. There's a couple properties where we could do slight design changes. And literally we asked them for a signature and we could just tweak it just a little bit and be like, nope, we got it. We don't need you anymore. And I don't think that's really right and fair, right? Because we were asking for it in the beginning. Maybe it comes to that. But at the end of the day, you know, the easement from property to property to property to property. And, you know, some of the hang up is a lot of people that own property. I get it. Want their commercial lawyer to do it. And then instead of being, well, hey, we rewrote this to our advantage today, right? Or whatever we think, then I'm not being equal to each person that's on there. So what we had asked everybody is, if you don't like the original one, please don't strike that one. Give us a supplement or a item A or B and say, hey, you know, we're a little concerned about this. We would like verbiage, like one of them was, hey, I don't want construction trucks and junk in my parking lot, even on this during this hour to this hour. Sure, no problem. That goes into the construction document. The problem is if you take stuff out to bid and you don't have those agreements that are in there, you can't get the work done. And, you know, and so, and the other thing that, you know, Holly's been working hard too. Once somebody's like, you're going to talk to my lawyer, that's it for me. I can't help you. I can't help anybody anymore. That's between Holly and the other lawyer. And, you know, we do have one of those meetings scheduled today that they've asked me back into the conversation to get them to the right spot. You know, the other thing that people are asking for that sometimes is unrealistic is, I want a new sign in front of my business. Well, that's not fair. And that has nothing to do with this project.
Yeah.
So I can't help somebody like that. Well, I'm not going to sign it if you don't give me that. Well,
Sure.
I don't know what to say to that. And we don't want, as a city, you all have given direction way before my time. We don't want to condemn it. We don't want to force it. This is a thing that's going to help every single business on the strip. Not one end of the strip or the other strip. It will help every single business. And this is the seed of change. You guys started it in 3. We're going to link them all back together. And what a great time. What a great property increaser. So, and we'll get there. I'm confident we'll get there.
For clarity, Brian, did you say that you represent the property in RFD?
Yes.
And your bosses asked you about this and you said that you're waiting on the city?
He asked me if I've heard anything. I believe Holly and their attorneys are in discussions and have been, and they've been going back and forth and back and forth. I mean, I don't think it's, I get, you know, wanting to stick to one document and keeping it fair and all about that. And I hope and pray we're not asking for a new sign, because I can't imagine we would be. I don't know what the hangups are, Mayor, specifically, but I can only imagine that we're not going to be alone in that conversation. And by way of whatever this lawyer's verbiage is versus that lawyer's verbiage is, and trying to find common ground is likely going to be a hang up for along the whole pathway. I mean, I think it'd be foolish of us to think that it wouldn't be. Now, hopefully they can come to resolution and say, okay, at the end of the day, we're both saying the same thing. You know, can you agree if we do this, you do that? And I'm not talking about anything other than verbiage, you know, from our standpoint, or I hope at least from our standpoint. So yeah, that's, I mean, by that, he's asking me if I've heard anything. And I'm not in those discussions. I'm not privy to those discussions with our company attorney versus the city, nor, you know, should I be. That's his job.
Holly, is there anything you can share with this board?
I have to be a little cautious here because you're asking me to kind of have a conversation with a client.
I know, but nobody's listening. Go ahead. It's just us.
I will say by and large, I am seeing requests for insurance requirements that we would not do violations of our sovereign immunity protections by us indemnifying another entity. I am seeing requests for promises that just can't be kept. As far as the question in regards to what is important or what is a priority, while a temporary construction easement does not affect the overall completion, it does affect the ability to do the work. So if there is a targeted area that they are attempting to have a temporary construction easement, and that isn't an option, it can make it much more costly when it comes time for the bid process for that company that's bidding, because Journey's Group would have picked a construction easement area based on best location, easiest entrance, exit, aspects like that.
Okay, well, that's the first I've heard of this. If, Holly, if you're involved with legal discussions with these other businesses attorneys, and there's a bottleneck there, and Brian suggested some of these issues may affect several or many other properties, we need to address that.
She is. I'll just jump in here. So I've been keeping track, obviously, of all the different conversations, not all of them, but many. And there are some, right, that have had some challenges with it. But we've been able to work through several of those when it was just verbiage stuff. But some of the ones that are still left out there that we're still working through maybe have additional requests that we're trying to sort through. So the easy verbiage things have been addressed. Right?
Correct. 100%. I would say the easy ones have been easily taken care of.
I'm just picturing a day now where the hard ones that can't be resolved,
Right.
maybe this board needs to.
I mean, Holly's got two right now, and that's two, right? So there's, I don't want to name them, but there's two. There's one and one more, and that's it. Everyone else is either sitting, didn't give us anything, didn't give us a demand, not answering, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
So it's not like we have,
Yeah, two.
we don't have 10 people saying, no, your document's horrible. We have however many people signed that didn't make any changes to it.
So how,
So-
okay,
Super flexible, except that, there's some things that Holly says is not smart for us is we're working on the right of way. Why are we carrying insurance on our own right of way? That's starting an issue all the way through. The contractor's got liability insurance, right? So, and I do not want to go down the legal because it is not my expertise.
Thank you.
And I thank for Holly.
Yeah.
Thank you. There you go. Holly, I did good. There you go.
okay, well, there may come a time where if there's an impasse, that the board may consider.
Sure.
Making adjustments on our report.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, and I will bring that straight to Kathy and the board.
Thank
Mary, I
you.
think you know that through Kathy and Michael's direction, I am not being hard-headed on
That's
these.
right.
we're pretty flexible. And I think there's been a lot of coordination between Michael and Journey and people who are asking about boundaries and things like that in the easements, that have addressed a lot of concerns. Of course, it is common for a business, to have an immediate reaction of, I want you to indemnify everything, I want you to insure everything, I want all of this, and it's really a lack of understanding of what a city can and cannot do. These are contracts, agreements between a political subdivision, not 76 CID, and these are long-term filings in the recorder's office. So you wouldn't have temporary aspects added because it makes someone feel good.
Okay, I'm out. Thank you very much. I'm good.
Brian,
Yeah,
so. So you're heading down the right track. And but I want to take you back to when we were signing petitions. Because, so imagine this, we hired a company, the company then got to the end of their dollar contract. And then eventually they said we had to be up more money. They basically said, you know, we think we're to the end of our abilities to influence. And kind of, we're gonna have to do it differently or throw up our hands. And so that's when we identified people who could meet with specific individuals. And so the question about, is that alderman, is that chamber folks, is that CID alderman, who is it? It's somebody they trust. Okay, you gotta find somebody they trust to sit down with. Now, I will tell you, the mayor at that time got us over the hump because there was a whole bunch of people who trusted him. And he's the guy that got a whole bunch of signatures that got us through the petition. But the petition only required one more than 50%. This requires 100%. Okay, so full court press of people who either have some common ground or they trust sitting down with these people, because it's real easy for the business owner to sit there and go, I don't trust the city, I don't even know who this company is. And so if we're gonna do something, I'll get my attorney involved, we'll see if they, and then all of a sudden it gets sticky. Okay, and it takes longer. And now there are some exceptions to that. Every situation is a little different. But if you all have a personal relationship with any of these people, just call them up. You know, I called some people, I hope it was helpful, and but you gotta move that needle. Now, so the question was, are we gonna get to an impasse? Yeah, you're not gonna get 100%. So Board of Alderman's gonna have to do something. Just plan on it. You're not gonna get to 100%. And you know, that getting 49 people is going the same direction as like trying to attack the Alamo with 4 Chevy pickups. And but you want as many as you can get, but we need them in a hurry. I think there's urgency in this. So somebody should, in my opinion, be coordinating who's talking to who. And so when I made a call, and I don't know how this turned out because I was on vacation, but when I made a call and had a discussion with that individual called his real estate agent. Real estate agent called me. I explained it to him. His real estate agent went back and he told me, he got a sense of humor. He said, I'm just gonna go tell this guy stupid. And that these guys are trying to spend a whole bunch of money in front of their property. And why would he have any hesitation at that at all? Okay, so I don't know how that turned out, but that's the kind of thing that's gonna happen in each one of these situations. They're all gonna be a little different. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I guess what I'm asking is, who's the person who's gonna coordinate who talks to who? Because you need that person. When we did the petition, It really was Ian helping me figure it out.
I got, Ann and Mike has been doing a lot of this work, I mean, and Mike, Ann would ask me, well, can you talk to this guy, so I'm sure that she had a list of, strategy who she needs to talk to, I mean, I'm sure she's talked to every one of the stakeholders that, are voting, not maybe 90% of. I got a question, on the segment 3, did you have 100%?
No, I can answer that because I.
So,
already-
how much when it was, how many was it, like?
I think 2 or 3. 3.
Out of many total.
36 when they're,
Yeah.
we had 3.
Okay. So it's already not signed it. How many, out of the 3, I mean, out of the 36 or 39 people, so do you say 36 signed it?
That's 10% did not sign it. 3 of them of 36 is roughly 10%.
Okay.
So if we got to 5 not signed, it'd be,
How long was that process took to do that?
I wasn't here.
A year?
But they did, but he did the work anyways, so.
I was just curious, more anything, just to
I
see
don't
what
know
the
how it
pattern
goes because
is.
it's magic wand, so.
Yeah. Okay, that's.
Okay, that raises another question. Jeremy, I know your plan is over the next 2 to 3 weeks to have the bid documents completed. I'm wondering if we could save some money and ask you not to spend that over the next 2 or 3 weeks. Because sitting here, it sounds pretty confident to say we're gonna be redesigning this.
So I love your heart. But so the components that we are completing are the last sheet series in the entire set. And we're mostly, I mean, we're mostly done. The part that we're gonna be completing are the bidding documents, the front end documents, the technical specifications, the job specials, bid form, that sort of thing. So it's really the paperwork part that we're completing to be ready to go to bid.
Okay. Just trying to save a few nickels.
I know it. I know you are. And you know, if there was a way to have pushed pause, you know, and it maybe at some point, but it just takes a really, really long time to get through all the sheet series for a project like this. And, you know, I wanted to make sure that we upheld our end of the bargain here and had you ready. It doesn't mean that, you know, there's no option to, you know, to be able to succinctly go back and make a change if there's some kind of a change, but it does impact all the sheets in the series.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? Do we feel like it would benefit us to have a list of those not signed that we can target and go after? I mean, I do recall us doing that with the original petition. And it did just provide one clear document that we were all working from. And if so, is there a volunteer to put that together and send it out?
So, yeah, I'll put it together and email it on Monday, let the next 2 days play out, and then that's kind of dead there, and it'll be the same document that we gave before,
Yeah.
shifting everybody to the bottom and a re-ranking of red, yellow, green, like we did before, like a stoplight, so.
That's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Todd, our plan of finance review?
Yes, let me get my video on here and come off of mute. Also on the call with us is Landon Boehm from Baird. And so I'm going to share my screen if Paul gives me that permission, but Cheryl was kind enough to print off 2 documents. One is a timetable and the second is a summary of the plan of finance. So I believe you'll have that in front of you. And okay, let's see here. So we'll kind of walk through the timetable here initially, and certainly the bond issuance timetable does need to take into consideration the project timetable. And so we'll walk through what we've put together and then answer any questions that you might have on timing and trying to match this up with the discussion that we just had. And then after that, we'll go and Landon and I will walk through some of the plan of finance considerations, just kind of at a very high level. So with respect to the timetable, Gilmore and Bell is serving as bond counsel. They were selected a few months ago. And so they've actually started drafting bond documents. And this schedule shows that they would have those documents available in kind of an initial draft form on October 4th. And so that's, just right around the corner. Hard to believe that we're already into October at this point. And then from that point, once we have draft documents, then Landon and I will begin the process with getting the bonds rated. And you'll recall from a couple of meetings ago where we talked at length about the bond rating process and what that means. And at the end of the day, we're looking for a lower cost of funds by having a bond rating in place. And we'll handle the details on that. Eventually, it will result in probably a bond rating call. But a lot of the heavy lifting that I will call it would happen really next month in October. So getting bond documents, there'll be several different drafts of those documents. We'll be working towards getting a bond rating in place. And then this shows coming back to the board at that October meeting at the very end of the month for what's called a go-to-market resolution. And that resolution really is just kind of an update similar to what we're having today, but perhaps in a little more detail after we've had discussions on the bond rating and after we actually have written bond documents in place. The schedule really was kind of built around that November 13th board meeting. And that's the date at which we currently have targeted that the CID board would provide its final sign off on the bond documents. And you'll see on that date, it says with parameters. And so we'll have specific parameters which bond counsel will include. Those would be along the lines of a not to exceed par amount. We'll have a not to exceed interest rate, redemption provisions, a couple other items, but basically that is the CID board's final sign off on the bond documents. And then at that point, then Baird would begin kind of the marketing process of the bonds. And we currently show that happening in early December with a tentative bond closing date on December 19th. So I'm gonna pause there and see what questions the board might have. And then if I've missed anything, Landon can kind of jump in and talk about any questions you might have from a bond marketing perspective.
Briefly reading this, there's explanation in here of the advantage of a 30-year amortization versus a 20-year. And But it would be, it says utilizing a conduit issuer to achieve the 30 years because the CID is limited to 20 years. What does a conduit issuer look like?
Sure. And we're gonna go through the plan of finance summary here just soon as we wrap up with the timetable. So Mayor, if we could hold off on that for just a moment and we'll come back to that.
You bet.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Doesn't sound like it, Brian.
No.
So I might just add that, we're certainly flexible on this timetable. If we needed to delay this for any reason, that can certainly be accommodated. I think what you see before you is probably about the quickest that we can move forward. I think if everything did fall in place, there's a possibility that perhaps the bonds could be sold prior to Thanksgiving, but I would not want to be on record as having promised that. There's a lot of unknowns, and the rating process will take a little bit of time. So I think the safest thing for us to consider is what you see here before you, and that is a early December bond sale, and then the closing would happen a couple weeks after that point.
Todd and Jeremy, do we have to have the bonds secured and funded prior to going to bid?
I mean, I think that's an excellent question. Again, I can only give you my recommendation, but I think Michael may want to weigh in on this as well. I believe you have to have your financing secured, but I don't know that it's in place. That said, as long as prior to, I mean, you have some funds. I don't want to speak out of turn. You have some funding such that if the project bid and was started and there was any kind of hiccup or delay, even if that delay moved you into January or what have you, you would not have a pay application that you would have to address, prior to February, most likely, if we started in January. And so long as you have the ability to financially cover your obligation to enter into a contract, on this project and pay the obligations as necessary, I think that's all that is required. Now, that said, there may be a legal requirement that I'm unaware of, and I don't want to overstep. And Michael, you and I have talked about comfort level with bidding a project of this size. This is not a small project. This is a big chunk. And bidding a project of this size without having the funds securely in place may pose an issue for you and a liability for you at a different level that I'm not able to speak to.
Holly, are you still on? Maybe.
Yes. Yes, I am.
So we've discussed too that what the signature line looks like, that the money is in place. It's two different pots of money before transfers. I think the other thing that we're all looping over besides this conversation about money here is you have a lot of money that's coming from external that's depending on this project happening. So millions and millions of dollars that we've gone over. So it's our efforts to get this to the finish line. Holly, do you want to speak to what you're able to sign on behalf of the city?
The city is mandated to be able to fund any obligations they get into unless they have a clause subject to appropriations, meaning that if the money is not available or it's not appropriated by the governing body, that the contract can be ended.
Holly, since this Yeah, and this is a clarifying question for me. Since the bonding that we're talking about, since the ESID is so, so intimately involved here, does it make a difference? Does that make a difference?
I don't think so, but I am hesitant to give legal advice regarding Paul's client while Paul is on here. My client is the city. I just told you a broad requirement by the
Thank you.
Constitution in regards to political subdivisions. I'm not giving an opinion to a client that's not my direct client.
That's fair. Thank you so much.
So to complete the dance, would we ask, would we ask, yeah, probably Gilmore Bell, the direct question. Well, there sounds like there may be a few questions, but can we go to bid without having secured funds? And if so, what are those parameters? Because we have to have a firm legal answer, right?
Todd, should we maybe cover some of the summary discussion we had on our call with Gilmore and Bell? It may help out here.
Yeah, I mean, if Paul has any thoughts or comments, I'd like for him to offer that up and then, and we can, I've got a couple thoughts.
Well, I guess, kind of adding on to Holly's comment, so it's the city that's going to be issuing the bid and entering into the agreement with the contractor. The CID is just pledging its revenue. I don't know what internal rules Branson has, but simply issuing a bid does not create a financial obligation. I don't disagree that I would not expect a city to sign a contract contractually obligating it to pay monies for services rendered if in fact it didn't have the funds. Because who knows what could happen. But just given the lead time of when the invitation to bids are issued, the time to respond, and then the review time, that in and of itself doesn't create an obligation. And I would fully expect Jeremy to have in her front end documents the right of the city to reject any and all bids. So I don't see any financial obligation just issuing bids. I also wouldn't expect the city to sign the construction agreement if it doesn't have the money.
So I hear you say that sending out the bids should not be a limitation. However, after the bids are returned and reviewed, before the city actually executes the contract, the financing should be in place.
That's the conversation you want to have with your city attorney, because the city will be signing that contract, not the CID.
Okay.
And
We will search out that answer because that obviously needs to be a definitive answer.
And I need to hop on the backside of that is when you put an item out to bid with today's construction, you will only get a price guarantee from the contractors we pushed really hard. Normally 30, we asked for 45 and we got 45, but most of them within the bid being released and brought back 45 days from when it's open. So
The other thing I would note, and Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, but at the last meeting, Jeremy presented the timetable that bids would, correct me if I'm wrong, that the bid advertisement would happen in October and awarding the project in December. And I think Todd and Landon tailored their timetable to fit that.
Correct.
Going back to the discussion earlier in the meeting, that sounds highly unlikely based on the mayor's summation of the timetable, because earlier we talked about now
Mid-March.
bids going, actually not even issuing the invitation to bid until after the new year. And Jeremy would suggest mid-January receiving and awarding the bid in February and starting construction in March. That was Jeremy's timetable in response to the mayor's earlier questions. So I think from Todd and Landon's perspective, their timetable was the original timetable, which doesn't sound like that's going to get met because you're missing easements and there may need to be project redesign.
Yeah, Paul, I think you're 100% correct.
So I think there'll be the money. I don't think having cash in the bank is going to be holding up this project.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So kind of with that backdrop, Paul's correct. Our goal here was to have the bond pricing occur and then the city's award notice to proceed would happen after the bond pricing had happened. That's kind of what this was designed to do. Now, a couple of considerations for the board is we don't know what the timing is on some of the state grant funds. So that's something that still is out there. And the other item that we'll need to address that if this is something that gets bid in January, February, the question becomes, what is the amount of bonds that we desire? Do we move forward with a revised engineering estimate? We've been modeling this somewhere in kind of the $32 to $34 million of total project cost. We could certainly continue down that path, but if this comes in at 35 or 36 million, then had we known that, we could have adjusted the bond size accordingly. The other offset from the board's perspective is you do have some cash balances that could be utilized to cover any overages that would potentially occur.
All great points, and I think that'll be in the October, November CID meetings.
Yeah. And then the other, from a financing perspective, and we're going to kind of cover the plan of finance summary here, but if we move forward with the bond issuance under this timetable, you would have bond proceeds deposited in the bank middle to end of December. And then if you don't spend any of that money until perhaps the March or April timeline, then you'd have those investment earnings that would be available as well. But those earnings are likely not going to be at the same rate as the bond issue. So there'd be a little bit of negative carry on getting those bond proceeds invested, but at least you have the comfort knowing that the money is in the bank, so to speak.
Yeah. I don't know if you're going to cover this later. I know the answer to the question that I want to hear, Todd. In this document, it says our interest rate range is 4.75 to 5.25. Is that affected by the Fed fund rate reductions?
Could be, and I think maybe if we're done with the timetable, I think we are. Let's move over to the financing summary.
Okay.
And so,
I think it's
and Landon certainly jump in here, but as we discussed with the Baird folks over the last month, they've ran some models. We've checked them against the models that we had previously prepared. And so basically our initial goal here is to take care of this initial funding need with a $32 to $34 million deposit to the project fund. And again, we can adjust this up, we can adjust it down to kind of meet what the current engineering estimates are. But we also realize this is not just about this project that is in front of you now. This really is part of the first part of probably $120+ million project to happen over the next several years. And so we're mindful of this upcoming bond issue, but both Landon and myself are cognizant that there's going to have to be processes and procedures in place that would allow the CID board to come back and issue additional obligations at a future point in time. So maybe kind of the first item, and I know, Mary, you had mentioned this earlier, but under state law, if the CID board itself was the issuer, the amortization period is limited under state law to no more than a 20-year amortization. And that really doesn't necessarily constrict your ability on this initial series of bonds. But when Landon and I modeled this out on the subsequent bond issues, where we're targeting a debt service coverage factor of 125%, if the debt service is higher under a 20-year amortization with this initial series of bonds, it really restricts your ability on those future issues and would actually drop the coverage below 125, which is not what we want. So that's really the justification for a 30-year amortization. We think it fits in better with the board's overall goals of this whole project and allows future projects and future bond issues to happen in a more orderly and a more financially feasible fashion.
So the multi-million-dollar question is, what is the conduit issuer? What are you referring to?
Yeah. So, and Paul, certainly jump in here yourself, but since the CID board is limited to a 20-year amortization, you do have the ability to use a conduit issuer. And this is fairly common in lots of different areas where you use a conduit third-party issuer. And some of what this allows you to do a 30-year amortization, which is what we've modeled out. And so this would be something along the lines of the Taney County Industrial Development Authority would be, one option at the local level. And then there is a state level issuer called the Missouri Development Finance Board, which we referred to as the MDFB, but it's a state level issuer that issues bonds on behalf of various entities for a variety of projects. We've done some research. Gilmore and Bell actually made some calls to try to understand what additional fees would be involved with a conduit issuer. And as you might imagine, with a state level issuer with the MDFB, very structured, highly organized. And so they have a separate fee schedule and separate attorneys that would be involved in the financing. But at the local level, such as with the Taney County Industrial Development Authority, they don't have a set fee schedule. And I mentioned the Taney County IDA. They last year actually served as a bond issuer for Big Cedar Lodge for a very similar size financing to what's being contemplated here. And I think in that instance, that financing had an issuer fee of $25,000, Whereas with the state level issuer, we're probably closer to $90,000 to $100,000 of cost. So, that would lead us, down the path of looking at a local issuer where the fees for going through the process wouldn't be as great.
Additional comment is, a $25,000 fee or $100,000 fee. You would have to think that would make a lot of economic sense to pursue that, taking an amortization of this dollar amount from 20 years to 30 years.
Yeah,
Just one opinion.
I certainly believe that it is to the board's benefit to utilize an amortization period beyond 20 years. I just think that if we tried to limit it to 20 years, it's going to hamstring you on these broader goals of completing future projects. So the 30 years makes sense. I'm going to have Landon jump in here into the conversation, but we've talked about this from a marketing perspective of the bonds, whether the issuer would have an impact on the pricing of the bonds. And so he's done some research on that. And I think it's important for the board to hear kind of what his research and what they believe.
Thanks, Todd. Mayor and board, as far as the conduit issuer goes, we went back and looked over the past 3 to 4 years and found that MDFB issued roughly 9 public market issuances as conduit. Taney County has only got 1. So that does weigh into the market's recognition of a conduit issuer. In this case, because the credit is going to be focused so specifically on the sales tax generation within the CID itself, which is the sole security and repayment source for the bonds. We believe that's going to be the main piece the market's going to want to pay attention to, which leaves the conduit issuer itself a little less important as far as their past track record in the market. So we advised Todd and Paul that we'd be happy either using either conduit and feel like our marketing is going to be focused outside of the conduit issuer itself and more specifically at the quality of the CID revenues.
Yeah, that makes sense. What DCR are we at? 125, 130?
Yeah, 125 for the debt service coverage ratio.
Yeah, so the debt service coverage target that if Todd, you can scroll to the bottom of the page, it's detailed in the summary of proposed bond terms. That provision is the bottom rung that we believe will get us qualified for a BBB level rating. It's, and these are rating scorecard simulations that we've run. A higher coverage target would restrict your ability to borrow and get you a slightly higher rating. So it's a bit of a balancing act between setting the lowest marketable coverage level for purposes of the rating and also maintaining the CID's ability to fund the breadth of projects over 2024 through 2030.
So Landon, maybe moving right into bullet point number 2 on the bond rating. You briefly mentioned this, but maybe talk about the interest rate range. And then the mayor also asked the question about what's going on with the Federal Open Market Committee and the recent rate cut and kind of the expectations going forward and how that might impact the pricing on the CID bonds.
Sure. And Todd, if I emailed you our latest market update slide from today, I don't know if you've got the ability to throw that into the PDF mix here as well, but that'll directly answer the question. Mayor, it's a disappointing response. You would think rates go down in our market.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me okay?
No, I just didn't like the response.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so the municipal market has evolved to be much like the stock market. Everything seems to be forward looking. So if you look at our right side graph there, compared to the left side is the 10-year US Treasury. Right side is the 10-year AAA reference rate in the municipal markets. The reason they're different, meaning, treasuries have a 3% coupon and AAA munis have a 2, is because municipals are tax exempt. So if you take a bank, for instance, who might be lending mortgages at 6.5%, by buying a tax exempt rate, they don't pay tax on the interest that they earn on a municipal. So they're willing to lend a lower rate, so that the math there would be 6.5, chop 20% off that. So you're really closer to a 5 as far as what they would lend. So hopefully that explains the difference in what the rates you're looking at are between the two different markets. Treasuries themselves, God love it. When we buy paper from the federal government, we have to pay tax on the interest that they pay to us. So that's a taxable product. The movement in the AAA municipal rates since the Fed drop, and that's shown the summary of action. Todd, if you just scroll down just a little bit, we put in a blue graphic here showing the history of rate modification, and this is the Fed's discount rate, so the rate that other banks and institutions are able to borrow at from the federal government. That correlates more to your checking account rate, savings rates. It does not correlate at all to 30-year, 20-year rates. Yep, that movement was down 50 basis points last week, September 18th. And then if you track the graph up to the right, you can see during that time that the municipal rate barely moved. We actually had a slight move up in rates after that day. So I think that, it all goes back to how we see the market right now. It's a very efficient market. It's forward looking, and at least the bond traders like to think they've got everything accounted for in the prices they set.
Thank you very much.
Yep. So with that said, Todd summarized the expected rate range, and I'll finish the point on this, which is plan of finance item 2. So we expect an interest rate outcome in the 4.75 to 5.25 range if we can achieve a BBB category rating. And that reduction in interest rate, and I'll compare that to without the rating. The most recent non-rated priced within the past couple weeks, more in the range of 5.75, which is about where we penned it out on our update when we ran the analysis. So, you've got about a 1% improvement between not having a rating and having a rating, hence why the recommendation 2 is on the page here. This in turn generates a significant amount of project production from bonding over the next 7 years. I think to the tune of $10 to $20 million. So that's the importance of going after the rating, going through the process, and setting the transaction terms, which are detailed down at the bottom of the page, in a way that we get to a favorable outcome.
And then I think I'll just kind of maybe wrap up, Brian, by indicating that, the market, is currently very strong. If we can get the investment grade rating, that's going to bring the cost of funds down for this issue. And then we're looking at a bond structure to make sure that in the future, as those additional projects come to fruition, that the board is in a position to be able to issue those additional bonds at that point to keep kind of the broader overall project moving forward. So that's basically our presentation for today. happy to adjust on the timetable as needed. We'll come back to you at the end of next month, if we stay on this same schedule. And we'll have, at that point, we'll have draft bond documents distributed and in our hands. We'll have had some discussions with the rating agency. And so we'll provide you a more detailed, in-depth update at that October 30th board meeting.
Very nice.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Todd. And just so for my clarity, it may be a dumb question, but moving forward on that timetable you have at the October board meeting, if we said, hey, we need to take a quick pause, learning what we've learned over the last 4 weeks, there's still no issues remaining fluid there, or, if you're going on to your October 4th step, that doesn't cause any issues to come up if we say, hang on, just give us a quick pause while we regroup and figure out where this is at.
That's correct.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Todd or Landon?
You guys feel comfortable that you're involved, you're helping us. Thank you.
Yeah.
Guys, Paul, forgive my, or Brian, forgive my interruption. This is Kathy. I'm just doing a time check here because I've got a hard stop at 3:29, and so does Michael, Matt, Cheryl, and Alex. So if we can push on through, that'd be great.
Happy to do so.
Thank you.
So the discussion regarding transportation, I'm assuming this is the trolleys that we brought up at the last meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Let's lead the way.
I'm not sure I'm the one steering this yet. Question came up with the downtown SID bond being put back on the ballot. There were some questions raised of the possibility of having this board, 76 CID board, and the downtown CID board come in conjunction with a unified trolley system to cover downtown, down to basically the RFD theater, down to the end of the strip. And I know that can be structured in many ways, but I'm just guessing that because these are two separate entities, it's maybe possible to have the downtown trolley go up to a certain point and stop, and then the 76 trolley continue on. But however that's worked out, I was at the level of, I don't know what the appetite is for this board. The last thing we want to do is interfere with anything we're doing with being pushed on our 76 project. So no distractions at all. Just wanted to get a sense of the appetite of if this board would be open to a discussion, and then ask the downtown SID board if they would be open. And there was some discussion that the extension of the trolley may be more palatable for the downtown SID to actually receive the extension from their SID expiring next year. So I don't know if any board members have had any discussions on that, any thoughts on that. We think that what I heard at the meeting was having one unified trolley would at least put our toe in the water for public transportation, for probably some public, well, obviously public transportation and possibly some workforce transportation. the current trolley downtown is free, so another suggestion was maybe have a $5 all-day pass to ride either trolley. And based on the numbers we're given from downtown, Sid on their trolley usage, that may generate a fair amount of cash. So if it was, I guess I was just framing it up, if it was a flat, no way, Jose, we don't need to have any further discussions, but if, depending on how the board felt, we could continue our discussions with the downtown Sid board.
Mike or Billy, you guys have any comment?
Guess I don't know, what does that mean in terms of, are we just, are we supporting, are we open to open discussion? I think that from the last meeting, there was a, comment that was made that we're open to discussion, you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
We're trying to, discussion is just, so from my point of view, I don't know what, you're asking, the board or me, yeah, we're always open. We have to, I mean, that's part of this whole thing about what's best and best for everybody. And I don't know, just all, this,
Well, yeah, big picture, I think it makes sense to have a trolley system, even if it's for an all-day pass. You go from one end of the strip all the way to downtown and back, to bring that visitor traffic back and forth. Any thoughts, Mike?
Well, I agree, I think we should be open to it.
Okay.
Just, again, not to say that I'm new to this board, but like, is that the focus that, and back to funding, but is that something that downtown's looking at funding it or getting us a proposal on whether we charge people to ride it? And with that, is that just with the people riding it, is that open to residents, like going
I
to
think
work?
so, I think it would be open to anybody.
Yeah, because we certainly know with our J1s, we have an issue getting them to and from.
And $5 to get somebody to work
Yes,
can be out of line, and how much visitor traffic there would be the key. If we listen to the numbers that downtown trolley says they have, the ridership, those are impressive numbers. And so, and who knows, this could be structured many different ways, but on the big picture, it may be downtown, that entity has already purchased their trolleys. So the 76 CID may have to purchase their trolleys and then have it as a continued loop, if you will. And then what would the cash flows from the ridership look like? I know from a city point of view and from a community point of view, how many times have we been asked the question about we don't have any public transportation? So I'm not saying this would solve it, but at least it would be starting it. Right?
Or maybe a cooperative agreement between
Oh,
the 76 CID and the downtown CID. So that you guys maybe, if there needs to be a pitching in, well, there would, right? Downtown said can't pay for all the operations of the trolley. But again, if they start charging some money for this, they wouldn't have to give as much money towards it as they've been doing with their collections. But we just wanted to be able to see if you wanted to open up the door to have the conversation about how do we move more traffic all the way up and down the strip. And I think it could benefit everybody, potentially.
certainly
Right.
open to discussion.
Yeah. Brian, you're okay with us at least pursuing these conversations?
I think so. I mean, it's worth gathering the information so we have information to have that discussion with. Timing, it seems like we've got pressing matters on the 76 side that
Sure.
we need to be tackling and focused on. Probably much more so right now than
Oh, for sure.
the addition of a trolley system that, isn't going to come into play for quite such time. And I understand from the downtown side that timing's an issue too, to get something proposed or some direction there for their upcoming, ballot. But yeah, I'm all for gathering information and doing so. And I know Paul had sent an email out earlier, and we need to maybe walk through that with him, or him think through how he could represent the 76 side, if he can get a conflict waiver or whatever he had suggested, and just so we continue to have his guidance.
Okay, thanks. In the spirit of time, the last item was the,
So,
okay,
can I ask you a question?
sure.
So Brian and Paul, have you clarified that the documents today allow the CID to operate a trolley system?
I have not.
Yeah, I'm limited in what I can say, but I've not, this issue is the first time it's on the agenda.
Okay. At the very least, somebody should check the documents and find out if the CID was set up with the powers to be able to operate a trolley system.
Yeah.
Fair question.
So as a board, can we ask Paul to at least review the document to see if it's even possible before we continue down this road?
Or we could have Lauber do it if it's feeling conflicted.
Oh, or
Lauber
Lauber.
wrote the original agreement. Paul, do you
Paul,
just
are
want me to have the Lauber team look into it instead?
I'll get back to you on that, Kathy. I
Okay.
just need to take this conversation, I'll digest it, and I'll make that decision and let you know.
Okay, and then real quick, a question about segment 7 and 8, and it falls under the same timing, if you will, of the trolley system. Meaning it is not going to deflect our main goal right here, just to put the question on the table. Our Board of Aldermen are actively, aggressively looking at ways to improve the curb appeal of segment 7 and 8. We're hearing that from the community. We had a retreat, the board's interested. So we can go down several different roads. Again, I'm just looking at an appetite. Would this board have an interest in, when we have time, to extend either extend our existing CID for segment 7 and 8, more likely create a new SID for segment 7 and 8, understanding it doesn't generate a lot of revenue today, and something in the guidelines for the next 10 years. I don't think our 76 CID will be knocking on the door of segment 7 and 8 before 10 years. So during that period of time, the funds collected from segment 7 and 8 for that CID would be used for neighborhood improvements, if you will, just enhancing that section with depending on the funds, but they're basically going to be minor upgrades, just do as much as we can to remove the eyesore of segment 7 and 8. And then at a certain time when the 76 CID is ready for segment 7 and 8, and here again, I'm thinking we're 10 years down the road, then that CID, I don't know, if it's written in this one today that says after 10 years, then it falls under this one or a new CID or whatever those technicalities are. Knowing it's low priority for this board because of what's being pushed at it, if this board thinks that it's either too distracting or it doesn't make sense, or we don't want to put the time and effort into it, then the city may pursue other avenues to try to accomplish that. I just thought it would be proper to bring it to this board first to see how they felt about combining segment 7 and 8 for an upgrade as we're marching down these roads over the next many years.
Alright. I guess real quickly, in the spirit of everybody's time, Mike, Billy, Kathy, Alex, I mean, what are your guys' thoughts?
I don't know what's follow the written term of.
The concept
We
would be
can
a
figure out, but
Yeah.
just to find out, is there an appetite to think about it? I mean, it's all on the same height.
I think so, I mean, it's again, it's the eyesore, and it's something that can be proven.
then it affects areas we're improving.
Everything.
We all know when somebody comes off 65 and gets on 76, for the first 2 miles, they're asking themselves, did we make a mistake coming to Branson?
Yes, and the improvements we're doing on the other end, does that even make it look worse?
Of course it will.
Yeah.
So Larry, when Joe Lauber did his 3 presentations, he basically said the number 1 candidate for that area was TIF. Has that become, do we have barriers to TIFs that would now make us want to talk about a CID?
Not at all. It's just, it was made crystal clear to me by the board how important it is. So we're now throwing everything on the table, dusting them off, knocking off the big rocks and say, okay, let's start moving down these roads. So this is just an initial, if there's no interest, we just need to know. If there's some interest, we'll continue these conversations without distracting from our main point.
Can you do a projection or give some idea of what the revenues are out of that segment? Because when the original CID, they're taxing my memory, when the original CID was formed, we had a previous person in the city who wanted, just really wanted 7 and 8 to be in the CID, but it was such an anchor to financing that it would have basically made the whole program fiscally unsound.
Right.
And, things change. And I don't know what the revenues would be out of there, but they were minuscule at the time. They weren't enough to build sidewalks at the time. Am I right?
It was not.
Okay, so
So I would find out what that really is, how much money we're talking.
there's a lot of things we need to get answered.
Yeah.
When you say minuscule, I'm not sure what minuscule is, but we're looking at different layers of how much can we improve.
I don't think at that time, it would have financed $200,000. And so again, you're taxing my memory.
If that's the figure, then that's a non-starter.
And so I think you ought to know that because things change.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it may be a tip, it may be a something else.
Yeah.
But whatever we do on 7 and 8, we're gonna wanna coordinate with this board, because we don't wanna set anything in place that will disrupt the future improvements, right? Okay, I think we got that question answered.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Okay, is there any new business to discuss? No? Hearing none, get a motion to adjourn,
So moved. Second,
second?
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks for your email.